he's a troublemaker. Well, I have got news for you, Ralph. You and Norton and some of the men in this building can learn an awful lot of things from college.
Some stories refuse to stay buried, even when the records are sealed, even when the witnesses are gone out in the spring of 2025. A quiet law office in Chicago received an envelope with no return address. No markings, no instructions, just wait. The kind you feel before you even open it. Inside were photocopies, not originals. A baptism record dated 1961, a birth notation written in careful ink, and a handwritten letter signed with a name no one expected to see connected to classic television. One sentence was underlined twice, pressed hard into the paper as if the writer wanted it to survive time itself. She told me the truth before she died. The woman at the center of the claim had been gone for decades, beloved, carefully documented, studied by fans who believed they knew her story front to back. No children, no scandals, no loose ends. Her life had been cataloged in interviews, memoirs, contracts, and court records. Everything appeared settled. At least that was the version. History agreed on. The documents didn't accuse, they didn't demand inheritance or recognition. They simply suggested another possibility, and that made them dangerous. Because questions don't need proof to spread, they only need curiosity. Within weeks, online forums lit up. YouTube thumbnails sharpened their arrows. Headlines leaned into words like hidden, secret, and protected for years. Comment sections filled with certainty from strangers who had never met her but felt entitled to rewrite her life. People who had grown up watching her began to wonder if they had missed something all along. But to understand why this rumor felt believable, you have to understand the woman herself. She was raised to stay quiet, to protect appearances, to never let the public see the cost, and long before television made her famous, she learned how to carry secrets without letting them show. This is not a story about gossip. It's a story about discipline, about survival, and about how a carefully lived life can still invite doubt long after it ends. Before fame taught her how to smile for cameras, life taught her how to disappear. She was born in 1924, far from the world she would one day dominate. Her parents weren't performers or artists. They were educators stationed overseas, living in enclosed compounds where order mattered more than comfort, and routine mattered more than emotion. The outside world felt distant, almost theoretical. English wasn't the language of her early years. Silence was. Days followed strict schedules. Meals were modest and purposeful. There was no excess, no indulgence. Emotion was something you managed privately, never something you shared freely. Her mother believed restraint was strength. Her father believed duty always came before self. Together, they taught their children that survival depended on control. By the time the family returned to the United States, she already knew how to observe without speaking. She noticed everything. The volume of voices, the speed of conversation, the casual ease people had with comfort. It overwhelmed her. America felt loud, impatient, and exposed. School didn't help her blend in. She sounded different. She carried herself differently. Teachers praised her discipline and focus, but classmates treated her like a guest who had stayed too long. She didn't belong anywhere fully, and she felt it in every hallway. So she learned adaptation. She softened her voice. She studied how others laughed and when. She learned when to speak, and when silence offered more protection. At home, fear wasn't discussed. Financial pressure wasn't explained. Problems were handled behind closed doors and never named. That pattern stayed with her. She learned that composure mattered more than confession. Years later, colleagues would describe her as calm under pressure, unshakable, reliable, someone who never lost control, even when chaos surrounded her. What they didn't see was the training behind it. She didn't become strong on television. She arrived that way. Some people find their voice by speaking. She found hers by performing. Music came first. Not ambition, relief. Singing gave her permission to feel without explanation. On stage, emotion wasn't weakness, it was the point. Applause replaced judgment, and for the first time, she felt seen without being examined. By her late teens, she was already stepping onto professional stages under borrowed names. Nothing permanent, nothing traceable, just enough distance to feel safe. Those early performances weren't about fame, they were about survival, about proving to herself that the world could respond without rejection. Her family assumed college was next, a sensible path, a predictable future. She chose something riskier. She moved to New York with little money and even less certainty. She lived in crowded rooms where privacy didn't exist. She took work no one wanted, clerical jobs, backstage tasks, anything that paid. Days blurred into auditions, most ended in silence, some ended in polite dismissal. Many ended before she finished the first line. Rejection didn't break her. It confirmed what she already knew. She had survived worse. When small roles came, she treated them like leads. She watched audiences closely. She learned what made them lean forward. When leads didn't come, she leaned into comedy, timing, listening, reaction. Comedy wasn't about volume. It was about control. Comedy became her advantage. It allowed her to steer chaos instead of fearing it. If a line failed, she adjusted. If a moment stalled, she redirected energy. That instinct made her indispensable. Directors noticed, producers remembered. She wasn't loud, she wasn't flashy, she was precise. That precision, built quietly, deliberately, would soon place her in front of millions who had no idea how long she had been preparing for them. Television didn't make her famous, it revealed her. When she auditioned for the role that would define her career, she didn't look like what executives expected. She was too composed, too thoughtful, not flashy enough for a medium still learning how to sell emotion in close-up. They wanted volume. They wanted exaggeration. What she brought instead was control. So she adjusted. She removed polish. She sharpened wit. She leaned into realism. She didn't try to dominate the room. She grounded it. Her choices were deliberate. Her pauses intentional. When she delivered a line, it landed not because it was loud, but because it was true. The results stunned the room. Casting directors didn't see an actress performing a role. They saw someone anchoring the entire dynamic. She didn't play the role. She anchored it. Once the show aired, audiences connected instantly. Her expressions communicated what scripts avoided. A raised eyebrow replaced a paragraph. A pause said more than dialogue ever could. She represented intelligence in rooms that underestimated it, and viewers recognized themselves in that restraint. Behind the scenes, the pressure was relentless. Live broadcast meant no safety net. Endless rehearsals stretched nerves thin, tempers flared, mistakes went out uncensored, captured permanently. The environment rewarded control or destroyed those without it. She never lost hers. When lines crossed into cruelty or laziness, she pushed back, quietly, firmly, without spectacle. And when restraint failed, she spoke publicly, knowing the risk and accepting it anyway. That courage didn't make her popular in every room, but made her respected. That reputation followed her. She was trusted, she was protected in an industry built on instability. That respect bought her something rare, leverage. History didn't change because she demanded it. It changed because she understood it. While others chased visibility, she studied infrastructure. Fame, she knew, was temporary. Contracts were not. When negotiations began, she asked questions no one else thought to ask. What happens after cancellation? Who controls reruns? Where does the money travel when the cameras stop rolling? The answers weren't generous. Residuals were minimal. Ownership was centralized. Longevity was an afterthought. The system assumed gratitude would replace protection. She saw the flaw immediately. So, she negotiated. Not loudly, not emotionally. With facts, with patience, with an understanding of leverage. That surprised everyone in the room. Executives weren't used to performers thinking past the present. Peers watched in confusion, unsure whether her caution was necessary or excessive. It secured her future. Years later, while others struggled financially, forced to accept roles they no longer wanted or disappear quietly, she didn't. Her foresight became legend, not celebrated publicly, whispered about in contracts and back offices. Studied but rarely replicated. It wasn't greed. It was preparation. She understood something fundamental. Control is rarely granted. It's negotiated early or lost forever. She used her position not to dominate others, but to protect herself. From the instability she had watched consume talented people before her. That mindset changed more than her own career. It altered expectations. It forced conversations. It created a precedent that quietly improved conditions for those who followed. Whether they realized it or not, history often credits change or protest. But sometimes it comes from precision, from someone who reads the fine print when everyone else is reading applause, someone who plans for the silence after success, not just the noise that announces it. She didn't outshout the system, she outlasted it. She was known everywhere, yet rarely understood. Fans wrote letters by the thousands. Some thanked her for comfort during lonely nights. Some projected their own struggles onto the character she portrayed. Convinced the woman on screen must share their private thoughts. She read them all, not out of obligation, but out of respect. She understood what it meant to feel unseen, and what it meant to be reached through a voice that felt familiar. She responded selectively. Brief notes, careful words, never promises. She refused to blur the line between performance and intimacy. Knowing how quickly admiration could become expectation, her kindness was measured, not cold. She gave quietly, supported causes privately. Checks were written without names attached, appearances were declined. She believed generosity lost its meaning when it required witnesses. The work mattered more than recognition romantically. Her life remained guarded, relationships unfolded. Beyond the frame, marriages happened without spectacle. When they ended, there were no statements, no confessions, no invitations for sympathy. Heartbreak never reached headlines because she refused to make it public property. Privacy wasn't avoidance. It was survival. She had watched what happened to women whose lives became consumable. How curiosity turned into entitlement. How access replaced respect. She learned early that once a story is given away, it cannot be retrieved. Colleagues sometimes mistook her reserve for distance. They were wrong. She cared deeply. She simply chose containment over exposure. Emotion, like energy, needed direction. Without boundaries, it dissolved. The public believed they knew her because she felt familiar. That illusion was intentional. Familiarity kept people comfortable. Mystery kept her safe. In an era that rewarded confession, she chose restraint, and that choice, quiet, consistent, and often misunderstood, allowed her to live a life that belonged to her, not to the narrative built around her. She wasn't hiding. She was protecting what fame could never replace. She didn't disappear. She chose distance. As trends shifted and television reinvented itself, she watched without resistance. She understood cycles. Popularity surged, peaked, and moved on. Instead of chasing relevance, she adjusted her proximity to it. Guest roles replaced long commitments. Appearances became intentional, not habitual. She selected work that respected time. Voice work followed naturally. Her voice had matured without losing warmth. It carried authority without hardness. Familiar without feeling dated, narration allowed her to be present without being consumed. It asked for precision, not exposure, control, not reinvention. Listeners trusted her instinctively, even when they couldn't name why. She became memory itself. Producers sought her not for novelty, but for grounding. Her presence signaled credibility, a sense that what was being said mattered. Younger performers recognized her influence even when they hadn't grown up watching her original work. Her style had outlived the era that created it, away from cameras. Her life narrowed in a way she welcomed, fewer obligations, longer mornings. Friendships deepened instead of multiplying. She guarded her routines carefully, not out of fragility, but wisdom. She knew what constant demand extracted, distance gave her clarity. She attended industry events sparingly. When she spoke, people listened. Not because she insisted on relevance, but because she never diluted it. Silence, she understood, could be a form of authorship. The public assumed withdrawal meant retreat. It didn't. It meant authorship over her own pace, over her own endings, over how she would be remembered. In an industry terrified of fading, she demonstrated something radical, that stepping back could be an act of strength. That presence didn't require saturation. That longevity was built not by staying everywhere, but by knowing exactly when to step aside. She didn't vanish. She remained, deliberately, quietly, where memory lasts longer than noise. Some people fight publicly. She endured privately. Illness arrived as it always does, quietly, insidiously, without fanfare. Years of smoking, decades of stress, and the physical toll of relentless work finally converged. Yet she refused to make it public. She didn't want pity. She didn't want sympathy. She wanted dignity. A life lived deliberately should end the same way, privately, with control intact. Even those closest to her weren't fully aware of the extent. She moved through her final months with the same discipline that had carried her through auditions, rehearsals, live television mishaps, and studio battles. Every detail was managed, every moment chosen. She adjusted her schedule, limited appearances, and maintained her routines. Friends were giving comfort without burden. Staff were asked to protect her privacy. Doctors were instructed to respect her decisions. Everything reflected the same careful forethought that had shaped her entire career. When she passed, the news felt sudden, even though she had been preparing for years. Fans were shocked, colleagues mourned, headlines called it unexpected. Yet she had left instructions, set her affairs in order, and ensured her legacy would remain intact. The estate, scholarships, and donations were all accounted for. Nothing sensational, nothing scandalous. Just a life concluded with precision. Her memoirs, interviews, and performances carried her voice forward. They reminded audiences of her humor, her insight, her courage, and her quiet authority. Even in death, she remained the curator of her own story, leaving behind lessons that were subtle but profound. Strength isn't always loud, and dignity is often maintained in silence. Her passing wasn't an end of drama. It was the final demonstration of control, consistency, and care, hallmarks of a life that had been extraordinary without needing to announce itself. Truth doesn't need defense, it is paperwork. Her estate was meticulous. Every instruction, every bequest, every allocation had been drafted, reviewed, and finalized decades before the rumors emerged. Legal documents, probate records, and notarized statements left no ambiguity. Residuals from her television work were accounted for. Charitable contributions were mapped. Family inheritances clearly listed. There were no hidden clauses, no unrecorded beneficiaries, no secret heirs waiting to emerge. Her intentions were deliberate. Every line, every signature reflected years of foresight. She had learned early in life the importance of preparation. Television, fame, and even personal relationships had reinforced it. Control over narrative, over finances, over her public image, all were part of the same lesson. Clarity prevents chaos. Which is why the 2025 rumor felt hollow to anyone who looked closely. A DNA test and a baptism record were waived like evidence, but they lacked verification. Handwritten notes and photocopies sparked curiosity, but couldn't override decades of documented reality. Fans, journalists, and legal experts who examined the original wills and contracts saw immediately that the story being circulated didn't hold water. There were no discrepancies, there were no hidden loopholes. The facts were immutable. Yet human curiosity thrives on the idea of the hidden. Social media amplified what careful records could not. Headlines and thumbnails demanded attention, favoring drama over accuracy, and while clicks surged and speculation spread, the foundation remained untouched. Her life, her estate, and her legacy were fully documented. She had planned for everything that could happen, except modern gossip. Her meticulous planning had achieved something extraordinary. She survived posthumous scrutiny. With her intentions intact, the rumors may have been loud, but the truth, etched in paper, notarized, and preserved, remained quiet, undeniable, and untouchable. Documentation became her final defense, a shield no hearsay could pierce. Her story wasn't rewritten. It had been written carefully all along. Legacy isn't mystery. It's intention. She lived carefully. Every choice measured, every gesture deliberate. Fame didn't define her. Discipline did. Each performance, each line delivered. Each moment on stage or screen carried the weight of intention. She understood that a life observed closely is still yours to shape, and she shaped hers with clarity and precision. Awards, accolades, and fan letters were welcomed, but never relied upon. They were byproducts of focus, not the purpose of existence. She gave thoughtfully. Charities, scholarships, private donations, countless lives were touched without a single headline. She chose anonymity in her generosity, understanding that the act mattered far more than recognition. Her choices reflected a consistent philosophy: impact quietly, live deliberately, and never allow external noise to compromise values. She became a lifeline for those who never met her, a quiet force whose influence extended decades beyond them. Spotlight. She worked relentlessly. Stage, television, film, every medium demanded mastery. And she delivered. She adapted to changing times, shifting from live performance to recorded media, from acting to voice work, always with the same meticulous care. Behind the glamour, she endured exhaustion, disappointment, and scrutiny without losing her essence. Her commitment created a standard for professionalism few could match, and fewer could sustain. And while the internet searches for secrets, viral rumors, and sensational discoveries attempt to rewrite her story, the truth remains exactly where she placed it. It is embedded in her performances, in contracts that protected not only her work but future generations of performers, and in the quiet generosity that changed lives without acknowledgement. Her real story is not about speculation, gossip, or fleeting clicks. It is about integrity. It is about foresight. It is about a life lived with purpose, leaving behind a legacy that no rumor, no misreading, and no viral headline can ever diminish. Her life was fully accounted for. Her story remains intact. Her legacy, by design, endures.